The purpose of this appraisal is to provide the homeowner with information relative to listing the property for sale. Period. Move on.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
All right, folks, welcome to the program. Dustin Harris hanging out once again in the podcast chair. Got another Dear USPAP Instructor episode for you coming up. First, want to pause and remind you, sponsored by a couple great companies. One of them, of course, being Working RE Magazine. Working RE is there for you and the appraisers across the nation as they tell you what's going on in the world. Check them out by going to workingre.com. Again, workingre.com. And a la mode. A la mode is my software of choice for my residential real estate appraisal write-ups. Should be yours as well. alamode.com or 800 alamode. Want to welcome back to the program USPAP instructor, expert, MAI, all-around good guy, Mr. Tim Andersen.
Hi, Dustin. Thank you. How are you?
I am swell, my friend. It's always good to be with you, and I mean that deeply. I look forward to these meetings with you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be here. I appreciate it.
So those who have joined us recently for the podcast may not be aware, but occasionally we do what's called the Dear USPAP Instructor episodes, and that's where our listeners ask questions, Tim, and we've got a couple of them today. I want to just deal with a very easy one up front, and then we'll go to the sponsors. And when we come back, we got a little deeper one I think that's fairly troublesome for most appraisers. But let's do an easy one first, shall we?
Easy's good.
I like easy. All right. So this one comes from a Pam T. Won't use her full name, but Pam T wrote in. It said, can someone clarify for me what a restricted report is, or if it even exists anymore? I brought this up to dinner with another appraiser last week, and he said USPAP got rid of restricted reports a few years ago, and that they are just reports now. Tim, you are the USPAP expert. What's the answer to that one?
Okay, Pam, thank you for asking the question. Many years ago, there were three reporting options, technically four, but we're not going to go with oral. And they were a self-contained appraisal report, an appraisal report that was subject to departure, and then a restricted use appraisal report. And it was the height of stupidity to have three reporting options like that, because the difference between a self-contained appraisal report and an appraisal report wasn't enough to worry about, and two, nobody from the ASB down could define the difference. So the ASB eventually said, look, okay, there are two reporting options. It's either an appraisal report or it's a restricted use appraisal report. Or excuse me, a restricted appraisal report. I'm sorry. Right. And so we're going to talk about the second one. Now, a restricted appraisal report is a dumb name. Okay. And the reason dumb is because it sounds like the appraisal is restricted. It's not. The report is restricted. Okay. You still have to follow standard one. You still have to go through all standards rule 1-1 to 1-6. You still got to do all that. The difference is, in a restricted appraisal report, you don't get into a great deal of detail in the report itself. Now, if you will go to the Appraisal Foundation's website, you can download restricted appraisal report templates, and they're copyrighted by the foundation, but the foundation doesn't care if you use them. And I would suggest you do. And we're very much accustomed to doing things in one way. Oh, yeah, this is what the GSEs want. Well, good. But since a restricted appraisal report will not fly with the GSEs, you can't give them to them. Therefore, their rules don't apply. Now, for example, In a restricted, okay, in your typical appraisal report, you got 427 pictures. Well, honestly, seriously, if you're doing an appraisal for the homeowner who's thinking about listing the property for sale, do they need a picture of the wainscot in the bathroom?
Oh, absolutely, Tim. That's my
Well,
favorite part.
of course they do. Now, do they need a map showing where their house is? They know. Okay. So silly things like that obviously are not going to be part of it. Now, is there going to be a sales comparison approach? Of course, there's going to be a sales comparison approach. And you're going to put the sales on a grid, and then you're going to say, I shook my chicken bones and I threw my snake entrails, and these sales indicate that the property has a value of $418,000. And then you're going to say, supporting data by reference.
Hmm.
And then you're going to go to the cost approach, and you're going to say, I did the cost approach, but it didn't tell me anything that the sales comparison approach didn't already tell me.
Mhm.
So as a result, even though I did it, it's not part of my value conclusion, so it's not here in the report. That's it. That's all I got to say.
Got it.
And then the zoning, all you got to do is state the zoning. And now you go zoning is R1. And that's, you don't even put the zoning is R1. You don't put, I called the zoning department and the zoning is R1. You don't say, I looked at the zoning map and the zoning's R1. Where it says zoning, you go R1.
Got it.
So it's a much shorter instrument than what you typically would turn in to a GSE. And the reason it's a much shorter instrument is because the purpose of the appraisal is different. Now, way too often we put in the GSE report, the purpose of this appraisal is to determine the market value of the subject property, blah, 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 which is wrong, as we don't determine market value. The market determines market value. So in a restricted appraisal report, the purpose of the appraisal might be to provide the homeowner with information relative to listing the property for sale.
Gotcha.
That's exactly what you'd put. The purpose of this appraisal is to provide the homeowner with information relative to listing the property for sale. Period. Move on.
Got it. Okay.
Now,
So succinctly then, to answer Pam's question directly, what did change recently, a couple years ago, with regard to USPAP and restricted report?
Well, in the past, a restricted report could not be used if there was an intended user.
Got it.
That has changed. Now you can have intended users all you want. You just have to list them by name and type. And then in the past, there had to be a caveat that because this was a restricted report, restricted in the amount of data in it, that somebody other than the property owner or the client might not understand it. Okay. Which is a wonderful caveat that I think should be there, but it's no longer required to be there.
Got it.
But the difference in an appraisal report and a restricted appraisal report is not in the appraisal. It's in the reporting. And basically, Dustin, it comes down to short.
Yep.
And the shorter, the better. In fact, if you can put stuff literally in a matrix, do it. And do you need a lot of narrative? Probably not. And again, you don't have to go into a big long discussion. It's just the zoning, zoning R1, move on.
Love it.
You don't have to go into a big long discussion about highest and best use. You say highest, best use, present use. And then I do recommend, this is not a USPAP requirement, but I do recommend that you have a very complete letter of transmittal. And one of the paragraphs in the letter of transmittal will state clearly that there isn't a lot of information here. And if you need more information, please get in touch and it will be forwarded to you timely with a huge invoice included for that extra work. But the whole point is to distinguish between a GSE appraisal, which normally requires a lot of work, both in the appraisal and in the report, to a client who doesn't need that level of reporting, doesn't need that level of information. They must have that level of analysis, but not necessarily that level of reporting. And appraisers have asked the question, well, who decides whether I give them an appraisal report or a restricted appraisal report? The appraiser. Hello, who's in charge of the appraisal? The client? No, or the appraiser. So the appraiser says, okay, I'm going to do this for you, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, so you can know what to list your house for. And I'm going to provide it in a restricted appraisal report. And they're going to look at you having no clue what you just said and go, okay. So you provide it to them in a restricted appraisal report. That's perfectly fine. It's just that most appraisers are not accustomed to that because typically they do GSE work, which has a completely different reporting requirement. When the appraisals go into a GSE, you follow their rules.
Right.
When it's not, you follow a different set of rules.
Love it. Thank you, Tim. Speaking of rules and reports and how you do things, a la mode, folks, makes it very, very easy. Whether you're doing private work for attorneys or real estate agents or homeowners or you name it, or whether you're working for the GSEs, you want the best software out there and the one that provides the best and most tools for you to be efficient and effective without cutting on quality. In fact, increasing the quality. And folks, that's what Alamo does for me. That's what it's done for almost 30 years now for me. And they've, of course, been in business for almost 40 years. Check them out by going to alamode.com or call them at 800 Alamode. Working RE is where I go on a pretty regular basis. I'd say at least weekly, maybe a couple times a week, folks, to get information about the industry of choice appraisal. They know appraisal. They're Working RE, folks. They're Working Real Estate Magazine. If you want the magazine that is about your industry, that's the place to go. WorkingRE.com. Again, WorkingRE.com. Welcome back to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out in the podcast chair. In the second podcast chair is my good friend, Mr. Tim Andersen. Welcome back, Tim.
Dustin, thank you. I appreciate it. It's always good to be with you.
You know, good to be with you as well, friend. I always enjoy having you on the program and just your friendship in general. To start the program today, I said that we were going to have a little more in-depth question after the break, but you've actually started already. I didn't think we were going there with this, but you've kind of already started answering the question. So I think it's just a nice way to flow as we're talking about scope of work. We're talking about reporting requirements. We're talking about how USPAP fits into all of that. So here's the question. This comes from Jackson. Jackson said, I got an AMC requirement. I think he means a revision requirement, or maybe it was in the scope of work up front. I don't know. But the requirement was, quote, provide market support and name sales considered in a paired sales analysis for every adjustment made or not made. Now, I'll admit, that's really poorly worded, not by Jackson. I think this is a direct quote from the AMC. But the question that Jackson asks is this for real, Tim? Isn't USPAP isn't it a USPAP problem when a client starts to dictate the entire scope of work?
Okay, let me address this in its first part. Okay, the request to show the paired sales you used to come up with the adjustments you didn't put in the report would have to become intelligent just to be considered stupid.
I think Jackson would agree too, by the way.
Yeah, that AMC needs to look really closely at that employee because apparently that employee has been smoking something that doesn't have any writing on the paper. That was just, that was just incredibly stupid.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, now, from a standpoint of the AMC getting back to you and saying, please support your adjustments. Okay, Jackson, I do not mean this to be snarky, but support your damn adjustments.
What we should have been doing all along, right, Tim?
Yeah, you're supposed to support your adjustments.
Yeah.
No, they're not trying to influence you. No, they're not trying to set your scope of work. They're trying to understand what you did. Support your damn adjustments.
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Well, now, it's different than what we've had to do in the past, Tim. That's the problem.
Well, when the AMC says, we found these sales that you apparently didn't find, okay, then do you have an ethical responsibility to trudge through them and reanalyze them? No, you don't. But just out of professional courtesy, you should. All right. And the reason you're going to analyze them is to find out if indeed you missed something. Now, if you take a look at the sale and you say, well, this is 456 Elm Street, and you go, wait a minute, 456 Elm Street is a condo building, and I'm appraising a single family house, then you can reject that out of hand. There's no work there.
Yeah.
Whereas if they put, 5678 Oak Street, and it was a legitimate comp, and you missed it legitimately, a simple error, then yeah, you're probably going to want to go back and consider it. Whereas if it's 4.5 years old and yes, it's sold, but it's sold after it burned down, then yeah, that's a good reason to get a hold of the AMC and say, pull your heads out, guys. This property burned down. It's not a comp for a house. It may be a good land sale, but it's not a comp for a house.
Tim, when does it cross the line? And I've had situations where I felt like that line was crossed. When I say cross the line, when does it cross the line where the AMC is starting to dictate my job?
Okay, that's exactly what they want to do.
Yeah.
All right. So the appraiser has to resist that. Now, you say, where's the line? I don't know. There is no black and white line. Obviously, when the AMC says, please consider, that line isn't crossed. When the AMC says, you will use this appraisal, otherwise we will, cut your toes off.
Yeah.
Then they've crossed the line. So most of the AMCs that I've dealt with in the past were very professional, and because they have to follow AIR, and if they don't, the lender gets in trouble. And believe me, the lender didn't want to get in trouble. So if it comes to the lender's attention that the AMC is bungling up AIR, the AMC is going to hear about it, and the lender is not going to do so with a smile on its face,
right,
and beneficence in its heart either. So the AMC, everybody likes to dump on AMCs. I do too, but they got a hard job, and they're doing the best they can. Now, sometimes the best they can looks stupid to us, and most of the time it is. But yeah, we did we do our job? If we're not supporting the adjustments, no, we're not doing our job. If we're not supporting the adjustments, we are not giving the public reason to trust us. If we are not supporting our adjustments, we are giving lenders reasons to go to AVMs and dump appraisers. If we are not supporting our adjustments, we are reinforcing, again, that real estate appraisal is a cottage industry, not a profession. So when the AMC says, Dustin, support your damn adjustments, the AMC is saying, Dustin, we love you to the very center of our being, and we're trying our best to help you out. If you'll support your adjustments, the birds sing, the sun shines, the skies are blue, and children grow up without ever getting pimples. Whereas when we don't support our adjustments, again, we're giving the public reason not to trust us, not to have confidence in what we do, and not believe in our results. So the request to support your adjustment, despite the dumb request, the end of it from this particular AMC, is a plea to us to do our jobs. We issue opinions, not guesses. Because if all we're doing is guessing, they can get people to guess for $12 an hour.
Yep.
And we are hurting ourselves. We're hurting the public. We're hurting our ability to make a living. And we are encouraging lenders to go to alternative appraisal means. So therefore, my advice to Jackson and to everybody else out there is support your adjustments. And somebody says, well, I know there's a difference, but I can't quantify it. Okay, then there probably isn't a difference.
Nice. Well put.
Okay.
As always, thank you, Tim. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way? Give us a phone number and an email if you don't mind.
Area code 561-635-5265. And then get in touch with me at tim@theappraisersadvocate.com.
Thank you, my friend. As always, can't wait till next time. I appreciate your knowledge, your wisdom, and your willingness to spend some time with us. Folks, again, if you want to reach out to Tim, I highly encourage that you do, that you have him scrutinize your reports, or if you are in trouble with the state board, reach out to Mr. Tim Andersen. He will help you, I promise. Tim at theappraisersadvocate.com. Thank you, Tim. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate it. My best to your family, including that almost new grandbaby.
Thank you, friend. Very soon. Looking forward to it. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.